Hello and welcome to India First, your weekly window to strategic affairs, foreign policy and defense. I am Nitin Gokhale. India and Bangladesh are perhaps the closest of friends in South Asia. Both share many common cultural traits. Both have large populations that need to be lifted out of poverty, and both are battling increasing radicalism. Terrorism also affects both the countries, and it is not surprising therefore to see both Dhaka and New Delhi cooperating at several levels. With Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina slated to visit India, making a much anticipated trip this week, what should be the outcome of the visit? To discuss her visit and the likely outcomes, we have a very distinguished panel with us today. To my immediate left, Mr. Pinakaranjan Chakravarti, who has been a High Commissioner to Bangladesh for India and is now a distinguished fellow at the ORF. And to my extreme left, Mr. Shantanu Mukherjee, a security analyst who has spent time in Bangladesh as well as on Bangladesh in his service. If I can turn to you, Mr. Chakravarti, Sheikh Hasina is coming for a first bilateral visit under this government. Of course, they've had exchanges, they've had meetings. What should we expect from her visit now? There's a lot of anticipation because of her visit.
You know, if I go back to the previous visit of Prime Minister Modi to Dhaka, you had that almost a 60-paragraph joint statement which had which is kind of a vision.
Sure.
It was a roadmap for the future.
Right.
So I would cherry pick from there to see what can be done. But my own broad analysis is that the relationship is going to be built on investments, on lines of credit, energy sector, connectivity. These are the things that are now, because we have sorted out much of our earlier problems, except for water sharing, which I presume will happen down the road somewhere.
Right.
But that is, of course, a point. But I would add another one, that is management of climate change, mitigation and adaptation.
Yeah.
I think that is very important. We have large populations, vulnerable populations. Sundarban, for example, I would like to highlight it because I am particularly interested in that that area. It is a unique ecological domain, and although the two governments have MOUs on environmental protection, but I think they should bring Sundarban into some kind of a framework where they can both work together on this.
Right. In fact, Bangladesh needs a lot of expertise perhaps also to look at climate change, because the sea levels are rising and the land
a whole lot of things there,
and the land is limited there.
Exactly.
All those,
so I think those aspects need to be looked into, and greater cooperation on that aspect.
That's right.
Whatever, exchanging information or data and all those things, I think will be useful for both countries.
Yeah, we'll come back to discussing the larger picture and especially what India and Bangladesh are looking at, and how a fair distance that they have travelled from the time that you were there. That we'll talk about. But Mr. Mukherjee, as far as the security aspects or the strategic affairs between India and Bangladesh are concerned, I think the security cooperation has been extremely good for the last at least 5-6 years, if not more. But there is this intangible which has suddenly been introduced by some naysayers as far as India-Bangladesh relationship is concerned, and that is the looming presence of China. How do you see that aspect playing out?
Well, definitely it is a bit unsettling for the experts, because China, we would not like China to really play a role proactive as India is expected to play. So, but it will not upset, judging by Hasina's overtures so far and her deeds, positive deeds towards India. We expect that India would get a priority and will continue to have an edge over China in strategic matters, as you said. As far as the terror scene is concerned, because lately, as you may be watching, that Bangladesh is struck by a slew of terror attacks right from July onwards, and there does not seem to be an end. It's a different matter that Bangladesh has been tackling terror with great finesse and decisive results. They've been eliminating the terrorists without harming the hostages. There have been large-scale arrest of the terrorists, and they are trying to stop the radicalization also. But enough is to be done. And if, in view of Hasina's visit, if there is a specific intelligence cooperation, an area which is focused by both the parties, how to step that up, that would be really tangible and helpful in the long run. And also, if I may add, is that their counter-terror apparatus, its teams, they are given much more training in India, say by specialized forces, special forces of the armed forces, you are familiar with NSG, the National Security Guards, SPG, etc., because Hasina's security is also involved with that, and the jihadis may target. So that is the security cooperation where I would like to accord priority.
Certainly, but the other aspect that people keep talking about is real-time intelligence sharing, that which you also hinted at. I think that is extremely important.
Well, I would not only hint, I would be very forthcoming and specific in that. Real-time intelligence that India too must be having as an ex-intelligence officials, I would assume, having assets and sources within and outside Bangladesh, and intelligence must be flowing. And all those actionable intelligence coming to India or the Indian agencies must be shared with Bangladesh without losing any time, so that any possibility of attack or assault could be neutralized or preempted.
True. I think that is extremely important. We'll talk about that issue, but I want to bring the connectivity issue on the table. I have lived in the Northeast for a long time, and I know how people in Tripura feel, or how people in in Mizoram feel about sort of getting isolated completely. And the Bangladeshi is asking for access to markets in the Northeast. How far have we come on that aspect between India and Bangladesh?
Look, as far as trade is concerned, I mean, when you talk about Indo-Bangladesh trade, I think trade, we have made it duty-free.
Sure.
There are problems, of course, of let's say logistics or non-tariff barriers, which the Bangladeshis do bring up from time to time, and we try and see how best we can settle those problems. One of the problems, of course, is always the issue of certain institutions like standards and things like that. But connectivity, which is a very important factor, not only for Bangladesh and India bilaterally, but also in the BBIN context.
Yes, absolutely.
The sub-regional cooperation, and in the context of the flow to looking east policy, or the Act East policy, in which Myanmar becomes a key player as a bridge towards ASEAN. As you know, much of the ASEAN infrastructure is quite good. On the other side, Kanchanaburi and others are quite good. Now, if Myanmar, we are able to build the infrastructure within Myanmar and in the Northeast, and Bangladesh is fairly well connected. Now we can take even the railways. We are talking about railways going up even to Bhutan or to Nepal. And I think this sub-regional cooperation plus Myanmar is something that, and I think today itself the finance ministers are meeting of SASAC countries where Myanmar has been included. So I think that that kind of work is going on. But as you know, all this requires heavy investments and building up of infrastructure. But railways certainly is one factor. And the use of waterways also.
I think.
And I have always been advocating the building of more pipelines. For example, India is a supplier of petroleum products. India is an exporter of petroleum products. And we can supply petroleum products to all these countries, for which pipelines can be established. After all, we are land linked, and they are not land locked. I mean,
exactly.
So when the links are there, I think pipelines would play a very good role. It will become cheaper to export many things, etc.
And I think we will talk about why the Northeast needs road access via Bangladesh to come to the mainland. But at this point, I need to take a short break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back soon.
प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क योजना ने हम गांव वालों के लिए तरक्की के रास्ते खोल दिए। सड़क के गड्ढों की फोटो खींच रहे हो? कोई खास बात है क्या?
अरे काका, मेरे मोबाइल फोन में मेरी सड़क ऐप है, जिससे प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क से जुड़ी कोई भी जानकारी सरकार तक भेजी जा सकती है। सड़क से जुड़े सुझाव या शिकायत पर सरकार वाजिब कार्यवाही करती है।
प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क से जुड़ी कोई भी बात, मेरी सड़क एंड्रॉइड ऐप अब हर पल मेरे साथ।
अरे सुनिए भाई साहब, जरा गाड़ी चेक कर लीजिए प्लीज, कई हफ्तों से आवाज कर रही है।
हाँ, अभी देख लेते हैं। मुन्ना मैकेनिक हाथ लगाते ही बता देता है गाड़ी का हाजमा। आप बैठिए। आपकी गाड़ी को टीबी हो गया है, ट्यूबरकुलोसिस।
क्या कमाल की बात कर रहे हैं भाई साहब, गाड़ी को भी कभी टीबी हो सकता है क्या?
इतना जानते हैं कि गाड़ी को टीबी नहीं होता है, लेकिन ये नहीं जानते कि कोई भी इंसान अगर 2 हफ्ते से ज्यादा खांस रहा है तो ये टीबी के लक्षण हो सकते हैं। इसलिए मैं कह रहा हूँ, याद रखिए, 2 हफ्ते से ज्यादा अगर आपको खांसी हो, बुखार हो, पसीना आ रहा हो, अचानक वजन कम हो जाए, तो ये सब के सब टीबी के लक्षण हो सकते हैं। इसकी जांच करवाइए और सरकारी स्वास्थ्य केंद्र में जांच मुफ्त है, एकदम फ्री। इंडिया वर्सेस टीबी, टीबी हारेगा, देश जीतेगा।
प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क योजना ने हम गांव वालों के लिए तरक्की के रास्ते खोल दिए।
सड़क के गड्ढों की फोटो खींच रहे हो? कोई खास बात है क्या? अरे काका, मेरे मोबाइल फोन में मेरी सड़क ऐप है, जिससे प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क से जुड़ी कोई भी जानकारी सरकार तक भेजी जा सकती है। सड़क से जुड़े सुझाव या शिकायत पर सरकार वाजिब कार्यवाही करती है।
प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क से जुड़ी कोई भी बात, मेरी सड़क एंड्रॉइड ऐप अब हर पल मेरे साथ।
जैसे सूट टाइप, यू नो, मुझे ये ग्रीन या फिर ब्राउन। ठीक है, आप ये पैक कर दीजिए। सेब कितने का दिया? बच्ची को संतरा ही पसंद है, यही दे दीजिए। अगर आप माँ बनने वाली हैं, तो HIV टेस्ट जरूर करवाएं। बच्चे को HIV से बचाने के लिए जल्द ही पता लगाना और वक्त पे दवाई दिलवाना जरूरी है।
करें वही जो बच्चे के लिए हो सके।
हर सरकारी अस्पताल के ICTC में HIV की जांच एवं सलाह मुफ्त और गोपनीय है।
Welcome back. You're watching India First, and we are discussing Indo-Bangladesh relations and the way forward. We were talking about, Mr. Mukherjee, about the intelligence sharing and the security cooperation. There is a likelihood that there could be either a defense cooperation pact or a defense MOU between India and Bangladesh. Given the history of 1971 and the way the Indian armed forces sort of enabled and facilitated the independence of Bangladesh, what more can these two entities do really?
They can do is cooperation on ground. So one is on paper, like Bangladesh press is today reporting that 30 treaties have already been finalized, which is to be inked.
Sure.
But the thing is, the defense cooperation we should carry forward, or intelligence cooperation or security cooperation. It should be absolutely real time on ground. It's not that we are really cooperating.
Right.
There are teams coming here and collaborating with
and training,
defense, and training is most important. And training is counted. The garnering, the trade craft of intelligence, the basic, the elementary. Remember, Bangladesh intelligence, I would focus on intelligence for obvious reasons,
naturally,
is the legacy of Pakistan.
Correct.
It's a different entity altogether. It's aggressive, it's this thing, the surveillance system, everything. It has to be given a finesse.
Sure.
And more technological use is recommended, which perhaps India has got an upper hand. And those sharing with cooperation with them is to beef up their capacity building. That would help them definitely to contain terrorism.
But there's one silver lining there, in case we really look at it, is the Prime Minister herself is really a pro-India, a very positive person as far as Indo-Bangladesh cooperation is concerned.
Very right, very right. This is then. But at the same time, in the same vein, it makes her more vulnerable.
It makes her more vulnerable, of
Because
course.
that has to be factored.
Yes.
To what extent we do our defense cooperation, security cooperation, but our own safety and security
also needs
has to be ensured, and that should be part of our agenda to see. Because if you see now, the present political scene in Bangladesh, the polity, you see only one figure worth the name which is friendly towards India.
Right.
I don't want to say that the others are anti, but she's the only one who got rid of all the Northeasters. You have been an expert in Northeast, everything getting rid, and demonstratively proving time and again that she's a friend of India. We don't need any more evidence on that. So she has to be strengthened, her hands to be strengthened, and she has to be looked after well, that she remains intact. So India has a valuable and trusted ally in terms of crisis and otherwise.
It is an absolute must, but that of course is there. But let me again come back to the the other aspects of the relationship. We talked about climate change, we spoke about trade, Northeast, but there is also what India and Bangladesh can do in terms of the connectivity to ASEAN we just spoke about. Bangladesh also has a lot of skills to offer as far as their the garment sector is concerned, or the jute sector is concerned. Can India look at getting something from there? And what is your view? You've lived there and you've worked there.
I think in the garment sector, Bangladesh has indeed done very well.
Right.
And today it is the second largest RMG exporter after China.
Yeah.
And leaving India behind, actually.
Absolutely.
But so that is why there is a good cooperation in the private sector.
Yes.
For example, we export a lot of yarn, textiles, which is converted to garments, which goes out there. So this import-export and the trade that goes on is beneficial to both sides. I think we are also importing their garments into the Indian market.
We do.
Many of the major brands here, and if you see, they are available here.
Yeah.
Now, the other point about the economic and other aspects, I've mentioned power, energy and things like that. And of course, line of credit is a very important player in terms of a very important input into Bangladesh's sort of effort to upgrade the railways, upgrade the communications and upgrade. Bangladesh also, and we have to be grateful to Hasina government for allowing digital connectivity through the Cox's Bazar, undersea cable up to the northeast.
Right.
Bangladesh, we have, I think, no problem in allowing Bangladeshi products and to flow into the northeast because it makes economic sense.
It does.
It does make economic sense. And Bangladesh has allowed Mongla port and the Chittagong port to be used by us. The other area where we should now concentrate is the maritime aspect.
That's right.
Maritime,
having settled the boundary.
Having settled the boundary, why? So what have we done? I mean, we have settled the boundary. We each know where our claims are.
Yes.
But why did we have to have this? Because we wanted to know where the claims are, so that the maritime or the blue economy could be accessed.
Right.
So those are the areas we should go, and also coastal trade.
True.
I think much of it is happening. Coastal shipping agreement has been signed, but we have to upgrade the facilities and make the arrangements, make the logistical and other bureaucratic arrangements. Sometimes we get stuck in that.
Yes, the implementation is extremely important.
Yeah, that is.
But again, we'll take a short break and come back for our last segment where we will talk about the way forward and what we should expect from this visit that the Prime Minister of Bangladesh is making. Don't go anywhere, we'll be back soon.
प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क योजना ने हम गांव वालों के लिए तरक्की के रास्ते खोल दिए। सड़क के गड्ढों की फोटो खींच रहे हो? कोई खास बात है क्या?
अरे काका, मेरे मोबाइल फोन में मेरी सड़क ऐप है जिससे प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क से जुड़ी कोई भी जानकारी सरकार तक भेजी जा सकती है। सड़क से जुड़े सुझाव या शिकायत पर सरकार वाजिब कार्यवाही करती है।
प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क से जुड़ी कोई भी बात, मेरी सड़क एंड्रॉइड ऐप अब हर पल मेरे साथ।
अरे सुन तो,
मुझे क्या सुनाना चाहते हो? जो सुनाओ मेरी सौतन को।
किसको?
अरे वही तुम्हारा मोबाइल फोन जिससे सुबह शाम दिन रात चिपके रहते थे और कहते थे किसान कॉल सेंटर से बातें हो रही हैं।
अच्छा, ये बात है।
हाँ, क्यों? क्या हुआ? अब बात नहीं होती क्या?
अब तो झट से बात हो जाती है।
ऐसा क्या?
हाँ, अब तो ज्यादा लाइनें और खास तकनीक के कारण खेती के माहिरों से तुरंत बात हो जाती है। और अगर कभी लाइन व्यस्त हो तो अपनी समस्या फोन पर रिकॉर्ड करा दो, वहाँ से फोन आ जाता है और समस्या की हल का मैसेज भी आ जाता है। ये देखो, आ गया।
अरे वाह, इसका मतलब इंतजार की घड़ी अब खत्म।
हाँ,
तभी मैं सोचूं कि आजकल मुझ पर इतना प्यार क्यों आ रहा है।
कृषि संबंधी समस्याओं का अपनी भाषा में तुरंत हल पाने के लिए पूरे भारत में किसी भी फोन से हेल्पलाइन नंबर पर संपर्क करें। किसानों का दोस्त किसान कॉल सेंटर।
और भाई शुक्ला, तेरी टीबी के क्या हाल हैं?
अरे भाई 2-4 हफ्ते का इलाज करवाया और टीबी की हो गई हजामत।
ये लीजिए हुजूर, आपकी ये हजामत भी पूरी हो गई।
ये क्या, आधी दाढ़ी? भाई कर क्या रहे हो?
कमाल करते हैं आप। आधी दाढ़ी मंजूर नहीं, टीबी का आधा अधूरा इलाज मंजूर है आपको। हाँ? याद रखिए, टीबी का आधा अधूरा इलाज करवाइएगा तो टीबी आपको दोबारा हो सकता है। इसलिए टीबी से मुक्ति पाने के लिए टीबी का पूरा इलाज करवाइए, फुल कोर्स। इंडिया वर्सेस टीबी। टीबी हारेगा, देश जीतेगा।
प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क योजना ने हम गांव वालों के लिए तरक्की के रास्ते खोल दिए।
सड़क के गड्ढों की फोटो खींच रहे हो? कोई खास बात है क्या? अरे काका, मेरे मोबाइल फोन में मेरी सड़क ऐप है, जिससे प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क से जुड़ी कोई भी जानकारी सरकार तक भेजी जा सकती है। सड़क से जुड़े सुझाव या शिकायत पर सरकार वाजिब कार्यवाही करती है।
प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क से जुड़ी कोई भी बात, मेरी सड़क एंड्रॉइड ऐप अब हर पल मेरे साथ।
अरे सुन तो।
मुझे क्या सुनाना चाहते हो? जो सुनाओ मेरी सौतन को।
किसको?
अरे वही तुम्हारा मोबाइल फोन जिससे सुबह शाम दिन रात चिपके रहते थे और कहते थे किसान कॉल सेंटर से बातें हो रही हैं।
अच्छा ये बात है।
हाँ क्यों, क्या हुआ? अब बात नहीं होती क्या?
अब तो झट से बात हो जाती है।
ऐसा क्या?
हाँ, अब तो ज्यादा लाइनें और खास तकनीक के कारण खेती के माहिरों से तुरंत बात हो जाती है। और अगर कभी लाइन व्यस्त हो तो अपनी समस्या फोन पर रिकॉर्ड करा दो, वहाँ से फोन आ जाता है और समस्या की हल का मैसेज भी आ जाता है। ये देखो आ गया।
अरे वाह, इसका मतलब इंतजार की घड़ी अब खत्म।
हाँ,
तभी मैं सोचूं कि आजकल मुझ पर इतना प्यार क्यों आ रहा है।
कृषि संबंधी समस्याओं का अपनी भाषा में तुरंत हल पाने के लिए पूरे भारत में किसी भी फोन से हेल्पलाइन नंबर पर संपर्क करें। किसानों का दोस्त किसान कॉल सेंटर।
Welcome back. You're watching India First and we are discussing Indo-Bangladesh relationship. If I can come to you, Mr. Mukherjee, we are just have a short time right now, but I think there is one program planned during Sheikh Hasina's visit to India this weekend. That is to felicitate some of our veterans of the 1971 war campaign. I think that is one of the binding factors as far as this government in Bangladesh is concerned and India. Do you agree?
Of course, I 100% agree with that, and it's a great gesture. It's a very overwhelming gesture, and at the same time, it's an historical acknowledgement, formal acknowledgement of the sacrifices and contribution made by the Indian Armed Forces.
Yes.
And on part of a head of state to come and go there and acknowledge.
That's right.
It's a unique gesture.
Yes.
And that too with the Manekshaw Center, if it happens when, and fortunately as I just told you that coincidentally today happens to be Field Marshal Manekshaw's birthday.
Yes, 103rd birthday today.
103rd or 4th birthday, born 14. So that's a great honoring.
Yeah.
One more thing if I may add
yes,
there
please.
is that there had been attempts by the rightist fundamentalist forces in the past when the Jamaat and BNP combined were there to flirt with the history.
Right.
And there were concerted attempts to dilute the contribution made by the Indian forces.
Right.
The young generation of Bangladesh should know the truth. So if Hasina is not, I am not aware about it recently, but if I may add through you to the viewers, that that should be kept in perspective. Like what she's doing this in action there must carry in the curriculum so that the present Bangladeshi young generation they know about, because in posterity then both the countries, the generations will know and the relations will be further binding. That's what I feel.
That's a very very noble and very important thought that you put there. I just wanted to, we didn't talk about the problems, the wrinkles that are there in the India-Bangladesh. There are wrinkles, and one is of course Teesta. It's hanging fire for almost 6 years now. Absolutely. 2011 it was almost signed, but it didn't because what we know of the domestic politics. But do you ever see Teesta happening? And also there is a issue of the Feni River water sharing, a little bit of it.
As you know, there are more than 54 rivers. I mean, there are some people say 54, some say 56, depending on how much water is flowing. So, and we have only one treaty, the Ganga Waters Treaty. Water is so important for both countries. And I'm not saying it's not important for Bangladesh or is more important for India. There has to be some element of sharing, because to give them the comfort that water will flow. There are agrarian societies depend on water. So that has to be tackled in some way. It's not that water is not flowing. After all, if there is no agreement, water does flow.
It does flow. Otherwise,
it's a question of how much. It's a formalizing it. Formalize that so that they have a comfort level that India is not going to withdraw too much water away from the flow. So I think that is something, and water is a sensitive subject.
It is.
Other troublesome areas are border management. Border management, then smuggling,
cattle smuggling,
narcotics, cattle smuggling, all these things are there. Some of it will happen after all. It's a long border, etc. that we. But I think border haats. I think we should open more border haats.
Especially in Meghalaya. And,
because that enables people to interact and do their little bit of trading.
True.
Which otherwise we would call smuggling.
Smuggling, exactly.
So that those facilitation has to go, has to be provided. Plus I think broadly there has to be more illegal migration, of course, comes up all the time.
Sure.
It is somewhat of a natural phenomenon. It is not natural. Migration of people
is an economic compulsion in many cases.
Economic migration is a natural phenomenon. We have to manage it.
Sure.
We have to ensure that this migration is done in a framework, in a proper framework.
Absolutely.
Now, what that framework is, we all know. We can talk about it.
Right.
But then that will reduce the unnecessary, because the demography does change with migration.
Sure. I think there are several things which are positive. Of course, they will remain negative. After all, these are two sovereign nations. But if there is any closest cooperation and friendship between two South Asian nations, it is perhaps between India and Bangladesh. And on that note, I think all that remains for me is to say thank you to both my panelists. We have run completely out of time. But we'll be back at the same time, same week, and discuss these many issues that are important for the country. But at the moment, it's goodbye and good night.